Hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's telephone town hall with Congressman Mike Levin. During this event, we'll be taking questions from constituents like you. So to ask a question, please press star 3 on your telephone keypad to enter the question queue. And during this call, you can also sign up to receive the Congressman's informative newsletter by pressing star 6 at any time. So remember, press star 3 to ask a question and star 6 to subscribe to our newsletter. And with that, I'll turn it over to Congressman Mike Levin.
Well, thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. I'm Congressman Mike Levin. I'm your representative for the 49th Congressional District, covering North County, San Diego, and South Orange County. When I was first elected in 2018, I made a commitment to you to hold monthly town halls, and I've kept that promise. This is our 122nd town hall. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I host in-person and telephone town halls for all constituents who wish to attend and ask questions. The different formats work well for different people, and we are seeing record participation at the town halls, and I so appreciate your engagement. Tonight, we mark 100 days of the second Trump administration. I know how concerned many of you are about the direction of the country, and it's certainly a concern that I share. This is a perilous time, not just because of the policies being pushed, but because of the way congressional Republicans in the majority are enabling the president and abandoning their own constitutional responsibility as a co-equal branch of government. I hope to answer as many questions as possible tonight and discuss my views for the path forward. And tonight we have a very special guest joining us to discuss the impacts of President Trump's economic policies. Mark Zandi is the chief economist at Moody's Analytics and also the host of the Inside Economics podcast. He's consistently among the voices that I trust the most on the state of our economy. Mark, thank you so much as always for joining us.
Thank you, Mike. Congressman, it was really an honor and a pleasure to be able to participate and have this opportunity. And I want to thank you for all that you do for the nation. You're very important to making sure that we get the right things done, and want to appreciate all the work that you do. So thank you.
Well, you're incredibly kind to say that, Mark. I appreciate your work as well, and I believe this is the third time we've had you at one of these telephone town halls, and we're very grateful. Actually, before that, I will say, to ask a question, press star 3 at any time, and to subscribe to my newsletter, press star 6. During last year's campaign, we heard President Trump and congressional Republicans talk about how they were going to lower prices on day one. But instead of lowering costs, because of this administration's policies, prices have continued to go up while consumer confidence has gone down. Last week, I visited a board game manufacturing company, the Op Games, based in Carlsbad. Management estimates that the new 145% tariffs on imports will double their manufacturing costs. Let me repeat that. Under these new rules, the Op Games manufacturing costs will double, and they are not alone. Make no mistake, American companies and American consumers will pay the bill for these tariffs. When prices rise, demand drops, revenue dries up, and jobs disappear. Excessive tariffs unravel supply chains both at home and abroad, making it costlier for manufacturers to source goods and creating a domino effect. By imposing harsh tariffs and making up trade policy on the fly, the administration is badly destabilizing our economy. What we need instead are bipartisan efforts to lower costs, strengthen domestic manufacturing, and let businesses like the Op Games keep innovating and hiring locally. Families deserve a break. Entrepreneurs deserve certainty, and our economy deserves better than a self-inflicted trade war. As a reminder, press star 3 at any time to ask a question. Press star 6 to subscribe to my newsletter. Well, the 145% tariffs on China remain. You might recall that earlier this month, the president announced a 90-day pause for most other countries. In the days leading up to the pause, you might also remember that the markets cratered by thousands and thousands of points. Then on April 9th at 9:37 a.m., President Trump posted on his Truth Social platform, and I quote, this is a great time to buy. That same day, at 1:18 p.m., President Trump posted that he was pausing tariffs on most countries except China, and that caused the markets to soar. The market surged, and middle-class investors and retirees who sold amidst the market volatility lost big. And I strongly believe that elected officials, especially the president, should not be giving stock trading advice. But there's something far more troubling to me. The sequence of events and the president's social media posts raise significant legal and ethical concerns, begging the questions: who knew what and when? For example, did anyone with non-public information about the pause on tariffs, like members of Congress or members of the administration, trade stock on that basis? So earlier this month, I wrote Speaker Mike Johnson, demanding that he immediately call on every member of the House of Representatives to file and release their transaction reports for any stock purchases and sales conducted between April 2nd and April 9th, the window in which President Trump announced his tariffs and then abruptly rolled them back. Under current law, information about trades by members of Congress must be submitted between 30 and 45 days from the transaction date. So we will get more information in the coming weeks. But in my view, this doesn't go nearly far enough. And that's why I am continuing my call for a vote on legislation to ban all stock trading by members of Congress. I've been opposed to stock trading by members since I first entered the House in 2019. Our first priority as elected officials must always be to represent the interests of our constituents. No one should be here to corruptly enrich themselves. And I'm encouraged that both President Trump and Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, along with many fellow Democrats and some of my Republican colleagues, now support a stock trading ban. The momentum is building. Speaker Mike Johnson is now the only person standing in the way. Press star 3 at any time to ask a question. Press star 6 to subscribe to my newsletter. Lastly, I want to highlight the ongoing threats against Medicaid. This week, congressional Republicans began the work of determining how to cut trillions of dollars from federal programs so they can give tax breaks to corporations and the ultra-wealthy. They have Medicaid in their crosshairs and are attempting to cut $880 billion from this crucial health insurance program that provides care to tens of millions of Americans. Congressional Republicans want to take away health care from kids with disabilities, seniors, and even veterans, all to pay for massive tax breaks for their billionaire donors, like Elon Musk. If they get their way, seniors will be kicked out of nursing homes, hospitals will reduce services or close altogether, kids with disabilities will lose the care they rely on, and working families will be left with nowhere to turn. People will die. And this is not an accident by congressional Republicans. It's a choice. And I'm fighting back against this in every way that I can. As a member of the Appropriations Committee, I'm using every tool I have: legislation, litigation, communication, and mobilization to fight these cuts, protect Medicaid, and make sure families in our community and across the country get the care they deserve. Because in America, your health care should not depend on the size of your bank account. No senior, no veteran, no child with a disability, and no family should ever have to suffer just so billionaires like Elon Musk can get another tax break. As a reminder, press star 3 at any time to ask a question. And now let me turn it to my friend Mark Sandy, and let me open with my question. Mark, you've warned that President Trump's tariffs could cost the average American household significantly. Could you elaborate on the impact of these tariffs on consumer spending and overall economic growth, and give us your assessment of the risk resulting from these policies?
Yeah, sure, Congressman. Well, I think it's fair to say that the tariffs are a significant negative for the economy. I mean, I think it's under any scenario, and there's many scenarios here how this might play out, but under any scenario, the trade war, the tariffs are going to do significant damage to the economy. It's going to underperform compared to where it certainly could have. And recession risks are now quite high. There's just a number of ways in which the tariffs affect the economy. The most obvious and the most direct is they are effectively a tax hike, a tax increase in the form of higher prices for the goods that are imported that are tariffed. And to just give you a bit of context, if all of the tariffs that have been put forward are actually implemented and remain in place, and obviously that's a big if. One of the problems here is the tariffs are up and down and all around, very difficult to figure out what's going on. But if in fact all of them are implemented and may remain in place, the typical American family will need to spend $2,800 more a year to buy the same goods as a result of the tariffs. And the average household makes $70,000-$80,000 a year. $2,800 is a very significant hardship. It's also important to recognize that the tax increase, the effective tax increase from the tariffs, is what economists call very regressive, meaning the burden of that tax is borne to a much greater degree by folks that have lower incomes. They just devote a higher share of their budget to imported goods. All consumers are hurt, low, middle, and high income, but it's the lower income households that get hit the most. Of course, the tariffs are also a tax on businesses. It's not intuitive to many people, but many businesses rely on imported goods to produce whatever it is that they're producing. And so if they have to pay a higher price for those imported products because of the tariff, that cuts into their profitability and makes it less likely that they'll hire workers, and in some cases they'll even begin to lay off workers. And given how high the tariffs are with China in particular, this could be very disruptive because the trade between the two countries is now starting to shut down. So even you may not be even to get a product that you might need at any price just because of how prohibitive they are. And that means jobs. And so obviously if we go from the very strong job growth that was occurring before the year began to now much weaker, and then if we start to see some job loss, which is entirely plausible, again, many scenarios here, but under many scenarios likely lose jobs, that also will undermine consumer spending and weigh on the American households to a significant degree. The other thing I'd say is, obviously the hit to businesses is also reflected in lower stock prices and higher interest rates, and that hurts all Americans, low, middle, and high income. The 30-year fixed rate mortgage is now going for just about 7%. Lots of reasons for that, but one of the key reasons is concerns among investors about the safe haven status of the United States, going back to the tariffs and other policies that are being pursued. And of course, the stock market is down, even with the recent improvement over the last few days, late last week and early this. We're still down about 10%, and that goes to 401k plans and people's retirement and is a hardship. So I can go on and on and on, but there are many, many channels through which the tariffs affect American households, American consumers. And I'll end by saying American households know this. We got a data point earlier today from the Conference Board. The Conference Board is a trade group that has been running a survey of consumers going back into the 70s. They do this every month, and they ask a set of questions. And based on that, they construct an index. That plunged in the month of April. It's been falling now steadily for the past 4 or 5 months as it became clear that we would see tariffs and trade war, and goes to the policy uncertainty created by other things like DOGE cuts and immigration policy. And it's now down at a level and at a pace that's consistent with recessions in the past. So, at the end of the day, a recession where we lose jobs and unemployment starts to rise to a significant degree is a loss of faith. Consumers lose faith that they're going to be able to hold on to their job, and they become more cautious in their spending. It's a loss of faith by business people that they're going to be able to sell what it is that they produce, and they start hiring fewer people and start laying off, and you get into this very self-reinforcing negative vicious cycle, and that's a recession. And the confidence numbers strongly argue that we're right on the precipice of an economic downturn, which would mean lost jobs and unemployment. And it's such a shame because, it is the direct result of a policy that our decisions that we're making, the president and the administration are making, that are leading to this. And it comes on the heels of a very strong economy. We came into the year with what I would call, I think the right word is exceptional economy. Much of the rest of the world very interested in emulating what we were doing, asking the question, why couldn't they be like us? And in a short period of time, here we are. So, I'm hopeful that the trade war that the administration and president will find an off-ramp here and scale the tariffs back and wind the trade war down, and we move on and avoid an economic downturn. But I'm growing increasingly nervous that won't be the case. And with each passing day that doesn't happen, less likely that it will. So, it's an unfortunate position that we're in, but I think it's important that we all prepare for that.
Well, thank you so much, Mark, for your words of reason and for being incredibly thoughtful, and also for explaining things very clear. We have over 7,400 people on the line right now, so really, really pleased to see that. And we'll get to as many of these questions as we can. And now I'll turn it over to the callers for your questions.
All right, Congressman, we start with Amy joining us from Encinitas. Amy, welcome to the call.
Yes.
You're live with Congressman Levin. Go ahead.
Yes. First of all, I want to thank you for having the town hall, and really appreciate you calling out the corruption and incompetence in the administration and in the Republicans in Congress. And while I wholeheartedly agree that, we've got to get the money out of politics, we've got to get the corruption and the incompetence out, it's also very important to point out, the vision of the future. So what I would love to ask you is, you're looking to the midterms, what is your positive vision for the future that we can rally around?
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the question, and I appreciate, your desire to be focused on positive things. I can tell you that these are difficult times right now, and I'm going to do everything in my power to highlight those areas where I can work with this administration. There are certain things like, for example, the Tijuana River sewage issue where I think we can find common ground, but I'm going to stand up to the extremism whenever necessary. And also, I do think, as you correctly say, we do need a positive vision thinking forward. And I have several ideas. I think every American should have the opportunity to prosper and succeed, and that it shouldn't be a struggle just to get by. We should have opportunity for all, and that means lowering costs. It means improving quality of life, and it means driving growth that is sustainable. I've been focused, as those who have been following my service in Congress know, on things like energy and water policy. I want to see clean and cheap and plentiful energy and water. The modernization of our electric grid, water solutions like recycling, desalination, to cut utility costs, to protect resources. I want to make sure we're getting on track with regard to housing. I think everybody that wants to own a home ought to be able to own one at a reasonable price, and we've got to expand housing, both market rate housing and affordable housing, and also this insurance crisis that we're facing, not only in California but elsewhere. We've got to address that and make homes more attainable. Our healthcare system, we talked about Medicaid at the outset, but we need to do all we can to continue to improve and build on Medicare and the Affordable Care Act. We've got to, I believe, allow younger people to buy into Medicare. I've advocated that for some time. And also, we have the Farm Bill just lingering in the background. That'll expire soon, and I think we've really got to rethink our food policy in this country and focus on things like regenerative agriculture and growing food that's good for people, good for our land. Obviously, the social safety net is super important. We talked about Medicare, but Social Security has to be strong, has to be solvent. We have our Social Security 2100 Act. I'm thinking a lot about AI policy and how we need to make AI safe and ethical and really lead the world. I'm thinking always about our veterans, of course. I have done a lot in Congress for our veterans, and I want to make sure that we modernize the VA, that we upgrade its facilities. We're not trying to undermine and get the VA, privatize it, sell it off for spare parts. On education, I'm thinking about the cost of education and student loans, and very concerned that Republicans are going after Pell Grants and also student loans. And I want to see a couple things that I've advocated for a long time. One is doubling the Pell Grant, and the other is canceling the interest for student loans, as well as making it so that on a go-forward basis, federally guaranteed student loans are zero interest. A living wage, I think, is really important. So we have the Raise the Wage Act, in the House that would have a living wage as we have passed in California. But all of it really speaks to the need to reform our democracy and get corruption out of the system. So I'll go back to what I said at the open, and things like the stock trading ban for members of Congress. All that's really important to me. So I would start there. There are other things I could talk about as well, but that would be an opening list for me.
So for everybody that's on the line with us, if you've got a question you'd like to ask live during this event, please press *3 on your telephone keypad. And also don't forget, it's very easy to get signed up to receive the very informative e-newsletter that the Congressman and his staff put out regularly. You can do that by pressing *6 on your telephone keypad. And now we're off to San Juan Capistrano, and we've got Kathy joining us on the line. Hi, Kathy. You are live. Go ahead with your question.
Hello. I just wanted to thank you also for doing this town hall. I know that a lot of representatives aren't doing these town halls, and it's so important to hear the opinions of your constituents, so thank you. I am a small business owner, small minority women-owned business in Toronto, and we import souvenir items from China. So you can imagine the devastating effect that this has had on our small business. And what I'd like to know is, upon return from your recess week, what are your specific plans to address the Chinese trade war? And what are your hopes for the near future to remedy this situation that's impacting not only large businesses, but small businesses that don't have the representation?
Well, you're absolutely right about this, Kathy, that small businesses are going to get hit, I would argue, the worst, and I can turn to Mark in a minute about this. But I will just tell you, I think the most important thing is to keep educating people on the impact to businesses and how this is going to mean empty shelves this summer, how this is going to mean dramatically increased prices, and how it will lead to companies like yours with massive bills. The company that I spoke to on earlier last week and had an event there, they told me that they had put in a purchase order before fully contemplating the full potential for the tariffs against China and against other nations, and sitting at the port was a shipment. And the bill they got was over $900,000, which basically is their entire margin in those products. So they have a very tough decision to make. I have other companies telling me they're trying to find ways to get around the tariffs, to find third countries that they might be able to somehow change the good or improve upon the good and try to get around it that way. I certainly don't advocate for that. That's costly and really an ineffective policy outcome as well. So I think educating people is key, and I think that it's happening. So when I look, for example, at the New York Times poll that came out just recently, and the poll was done April 21st to 24th, the president's approval on the economy is 43%, with 55% disapproving. Trade with other countries, he's at 42, with 53% opposing. And overall, as president, he's at 42, with 54% opposing. Now, the president ran on the economy. He ran on stabilizing things, improving things, and he's done the opposite of that. Mark, maybe if you want to speak to Kathy as a small business owner and to the unique impact of all these tariffs on small businesses as opposed to large corporations.
Well, right. I mean, of course, Kathy knows better than I, but as a small business person, you just don't have the same financial resources to kind of navigate around all of this and to kind of manage through or, figure out alternative ways to get the product that you need from other sources. So it's, obviously incredibly difficult for particularly small businesses. I think in the case of the China tariffs, the 145% on Chinese imports into the U.S. and Chinese retaliatory tariffs of 125% on U.S. exports into China, it's just unsustainable. I think not only because the prices for all the things that we trade between these two countries will go up. And by the way, it's the largest trading relationship between the U.S. and China. The trading relationship is the largest in the world by far if you add up exports and imports. So, and we're the two largest economies on the planet. And if we're going at it like this, I think the damage is going to be so serious to both countries and to the global economy that it's just not sustainable. And then I think the thing that's really going to perhaps crystallize all of this, all the angst and all the problems with these tariffs is the shortages. I mean, as Kathy was pointing out, many small businesses just won't be able to get the product at all. So the proverbial store shelf will be empty. And I think once people see that, I think that's going to be too much to bear. So the broader point being that I don't think that this can continue, and therefore it won't, that the administration president will figure out a way to dial it back, dial it down. Now, I don't think it really even matters if it's an agreement between the U.S. and China, but just simply get those tariffs down to a place where there's still going to be a problem. There still means that you're going to be paying higher prices that you're going to have to pass along to your customers, but at least you get the product. So I'm hopeful that will occur, at some point in the near future, because the pressure not to do so, I think, will be so significant, so serious that I just think it's just too much to bear. So, I buckle up. I mean, it's not going to be easy under any scenario, but I think you'll get some relief just because I just don't think they can continue on with the way things are at this point. It's just too much.
I certainly agree with that. Thank you, Mark. Dirk, let's turn it over to you for the next question.
All right, next up, we've got Diana joining us. Diana, you are live with the Congressman. Go ahead with your question, please.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for taking questions from us. I have a question for you, Congressman. What are you doing to reach Trump supporters? Because most of us Democrats do understand how tariffs affect our lives and how expensive everything gets. But it seems that most Trump supporters do not understand what is really going on. They don't understand how this affects it, how expensive our life is going to be because of them. So what are you doing to reach them, and are you doing anything at all? And my second part of the question is, today when Amazon announced that they were going to be putting, signs or in the bill or in whatever, when you're checking out, that how much is the importation costing for each product, then Trump freaked out because, of course, it becomes a visual, it becomes reality. Is there any way that all Democrats can come together and figure out a way to show people out there, either with signs or advertisement or, I don't know, some kind of visual that people can see the reality? This used to cost this and now it costs that. So it's not only what they hear from you, but also that they can actually see something tangible, something that they can read and look and analyze?
Well, thank you very much for the question, Diana. The first thing I would say is we've got over 7,400 people on the line right now, and I know many of them are supporters of the president. And to all of you, I say it's an honor to be your representative, just as it is an honor to be representing people across the ideological spectrum. I will tell you that I've heard from many Trump supporters in the past 100 days. Some of them are happy with the president. Others believe that he's gone too far, too fast, and that he's done too much without the Congress being involved as the Constitution requires. Part of that is because House and Senate Republicans have turned over their constitutional responsibility to the executive, and part of it is because the president has just taken it away. And there's fear of repercussion, whether it be political or personal repercussion from the president's supporters. I will consistently try to reach out, whether via town halls or any other mode, as I always have and always will, to people across the spectrum of political party, political belief, and I want to hear everyone's concerns equally. What I will tell you about how I try to communicate is I try to listen first. My grandmother had a lot of sayings. One was, I had 2 ears and 1 mouth, and I should use them accordingly. So I've been doing a lot of listening to my constituents, and specifically this past week, it's been business owners that I've been speaking with who voted for the president and thought that he would improve the economy. They remembered the economy during the first term, kind of pre-COVID, and they thought that Trump would come in and make things better. They did not account for the tariffs, and I think there's a combination of surprise. For some, it's disappointment. For others, it's sort of a hope that near-term pain will yield long-term gain. And I think it's a mix, but there's a lot of concern when those bills come for the purchase orders that are already on, that they're already at the port. When these business owners have to decide what to do. Do they raise their prices? Do they have to lay off workers? Do they, have some profits they just eat and wreck the profitability of their companies and the bottom line? So these are tough choices that these business owners are making. I don't have any easy answers for those who supported the president and didn't expect this, but here we are. Mark, do you have anything to add on what you're hearing from the president's supporters about all this?
Well, I hear just like you, it's this argument of short-term pain for long-term gain. I don't know. I don't hear a good articulation of what that means. I mean, in my view, maybe I should take a step back and say, look, globalization that has occurred over the past few decades did hurt a lot of Americans. I mean, we benefited in the form of lower prices for lots of goods that we got from China and other places, but it did hurt. It hollowed out manufacturing and caused unemployment and created the kind of political environment that I think exists today, the kind of fractured environment, because people did not benefit from that globalization. And we're paying a price for that. So I, agree with that perspective, but I don't think tariffs are going to be the solution to address that issue. In fact, I think it's going to make it worse. I mean, the argument is, look, we got this short-term pain, but ultimately it's going to attract or induce or entice these manufacturers to come back to the United States. I just don't see how that works. I mean, just think about it for a few seconds. Put yourself in the shoes of the CEO of a global vehicle manufacturing company trying to decide, whether to build a new assembly plant in the United States, which is going to come to fruition 3-4 years from now, because these things are big projects. It takes a lot of time to figure it out. Well, the question you're going to ask yourself is, if to do that project is, well, what's the tariff going to be in 3 to 4 years? And the answer is, I have no idea. I can't even tell you what it's going to be next week, let alone 3-4 years from now. And then also, what is it going to be a decade from now or 2 decades from now? Because I want to be producing vehicles at that plant for that period of time. So if I can't answer those questions as CEO, I'm just not going to make that investment. And so I don't see tariffs as a way of bringing manufacturing back to the United States, and therefore it's not going to address this long-running issue. And by the way, even if the manufacturing were to come back to the U.S., and it say Zandy's wrong and it's going to come back, it's not going to bring a lot of jobs. I mean, I was recently in a manufacturing. I'm from the state of Pennsylvania. I live in Philadelphia, and we have some light manufacturing in the state. And I visited a factory recently, and when I stepped into the factory, the lights went on, and the reason was because the lights were off because there's no humans in the factory. So, even if you get the manufacturing back, you're not going to get the job. So, the solution to there's definitely an issue here. We've left people behind, and we've got to figure out ways to get them re-engaged. But tariffs are not the solution. And I'll just end by saying, President Biden kind of pursued a different policy to get manufacturing back and try to get jobs back. The CHIPS Act or the Inflation Reduction Act or the infrastructure legislation, all those things provided funding and tax subsidy to the private sector, empowered the private sector to go out and build. It actually worked. I mean, if you look at, I'll end with just a statistic. If you look at investment in manufacturing facilities, factories, but before the CHIPS Act that was passed in 2022, for the 10 years prior to that, investment was $75 billion a year. One year, some years a little higher, some years a little lower. At the start of this year, coming into this year, it was running well over $200 billion annualized because of the CHIPS Act and the Inflation Reduction Act and infrastructure law. So there's ways of doing it. Tariffs just aren't the way. But when you listen to the supporters of the idea, they somehow think that Zandy's wrong. And by the way, nearly every economist is wrong because economists debate everything. But the one thing there's no debate on is that broad-based tariffs are not a good idea. And they're thinking the argument is that they're wrong, that this will bring manufacturing back. But I just don't see it. It won't happen. It's just not the policy that will result in long-term gain. It's going to be short-term pain and post-long-term pain. But it's difference of opinion, different of view, I guess, and we're going to have to see how this plays out. But we're going to figure this out, I think, here pretty quickly.
Well, Mark, I will take your word over Peter Navarro's any day of the week, ending in a Y.
Well, thank you.
On that, I think I'm not alone. Let me turn it back over for our next question.
Thank you very much, Congressman. I'd like to make a quick detour from the live Q&A and ask a poll question to kind of get the feeling of from everybody that's on the call with us. Please use your telephone keypad to respond to this question. Are you concerned that Trump's tariffs will increase cost for your family? Please press 1 for yes, press 2 for no. Again, please use your telephone keypad to reply to this question. Are you concerned that Trump's tariffs will increase costs for your family? Please press 1 for yes, press 2 for no. A number of people are keen in their response. Thank you very much. We'll have the results of this question coming up later in this call. But let's get back to another live question. We've got Troyce on the line with us. Hello, Troyce. Welcome to the call. Go ahead with your question, please.
Hi there. Thank you, Congressman. I live in Ladera Ranch, and I'm a proud supporter of you. I'd also like to say hello to our fellow constituents. And I first want to start with a comment by saying I'm a very heavy Democrat, but I do have a few Republican tendencies in the sense of very sensible ones. Like I do want lower taxes as well for everybody, including myself. And so that leads me to kind of believing that you are a bipartisan congressman. And I am curious as to the state of our democracy and just what I hear over and over again about how truly scary it is right now. Can you give any glimmer of hope of things that we don't see behind the scenes, such as that you are working with sane Republicans that are true patriots, meaning they do care about the Constitution and they do care about the sake of our country, and what's happening is literally a vendetta from his first 4 years in the sense, and is there some glimmer of hope that, anybody on the other side besides Democrats do care about our democracy, but also I feel like, just as another statement, we need to start getting a little bit harder on our punches, saying what is being done is wrong. And we know what's being done is wrong, but we need to maybe push it up on taking care of things, because I feel like things are just being said but not being done to prevent. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Troyce. I really appreciate what you said. I will always try to seek bipartisan common ground on anything that I can. But I also have to stand up with everything I have against extremism. And what I am seeing right now from Republicans in Congress, by and large, is a desire to avoid the personal and political retribution from President Trump. I think they are concerned about their electoral future, and they are concerned about, in many cases, their personal security. And as a result, that makes things very difficult for bipartisan work. I'm on the Appropriations Committee, which historically is the most bipartisan committee in the House of Representatives. It's where we come together and we determine the spending priorities of the nation. And this has been, in many years, a bipartisan endeavor, and I am very concerned that that is not happening this year the way it needs to, nor did it happen last year, where instead of a bipartisan bill, Republicans moved forward a partisan continuing resolution with a narrow amount of Democrats in the Senate deciding to support what I felt was a really, really bad bill. I'm also concerned that the Republican fiscal conservatism is going by the wayside as well. Our debt today is $36.1 trillion. If President Trump has his way and they move forward with this tax plan where we're going to give massive breaks to those at the top, that will add another $4 or $5 trillion to the debt. And if they move forward with no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, that would further increase the debt, where by the end of the decade it would be between $50 and $55 trillion. What that would mean is that as a percentage of what we pay overall, every year we pay around $7 trillion in mandatory and discretionary spending and servicing that debt. We are already paying over $1 trillion to service that debt. That's the highest on record. That will go through the roof as well, and that will harm the American dollar as the stable, the reserve currency around the globe. That will harm America's credibility around the globe as a stable, predictable partner. That is already being harmed by President Trump. So I say all that as background because there are people on the other side of the aisle that know that all of what I just said is accurate. They want to work with me to do something about it, but they feel stuck. So I am committed to working every single day, whether behind the scenes or in front of the cameras and the microphones, to finding those decent Republicans out there who want to work with me. What I see right now, for example, in this spending bill is there are Republicans who want to protect Medicaid, but they're going to have a decision to make whether they're willing to stand up to President Trump and to the extreme faction, the far-right Freedom Caucus, to stand up for Medicaid against cuts, stand up for the most vulnerable seniors, stand up for the most vulnerable children and most vulnerable veterans, against having these massive tax cuts for billionaire donors, and that's the trade-off, and we'll see what they do in the coming weeks. In the meantime, I'm going to find areas like the Tijuana sewage crisis, like spent nuclear fuel, and like hopefully sand replenishment and infrastructure, water, and other projects where we can find common ground. I will never give up on working together because we can do very big things when we work together.
Thank you, Congressman. Moving on to our next question. Our caller is James from Oceanside. Hello, James. You are live with Congressman Levin. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. Thanks for taking the call. To sidestep from the economy just here for a second. So I just want to know, like, legally, what can be done as far as this guy, like, blatantly ignoring court orders and, this guy having the judge arrested in Wisconsin for supposedly, helping an illegal, some guy evade the police when, it is just ridiculous here. I mean, he's blatantly ignoring laws here. So at what point do we step in and something is done about that?
Well, we're going to try with everything we have to support litigation. I mentioned at the outset legislation, communication, mobilization, and litigation. I am I like to say a recovering attorney. I am part of the litigation task force being headed by my friend Jamie Raskin, where we are closely tracking over 140 lawsuits that have been filed against the administration, including for many of the things that you just discussed. We've filed amicus briefs probably in, a dozen or so cases and growing as members of the House. And I am personally tracking each and every one of these cases to see how we can continue to help. What I will tell you is that right now the courts are going through their adjudication of these cases, and that we are winning. We are winning, and the Trump administration is losing. The challenge, as you correctly state, is what happens when the president or the administration defies a court order. And my belief, and I will continue to have this belief, and I hope that I am not being, overly optimistic about this, but it is really what I believe, is that when the Supreme Court begins to hear these cases, a number of these cases, a record amount of cases for this point in a presidency, and when the Supreme Court, not only with Kagan, Sotomayor, Jackson, but also with Roberts, and I believe with Barrett on a number of these cases, when we get a 5-4, or maybe even a 6-3 on some of these cases, when they start ruling against President Trump has said that he will not defy the Supreme Court of the United States. Overwhelmingly, the people do not want him to defy the Supreme Court of the United States. Overwhelmingly, Republicans do not want him to defy the Supreme Court of the United States. And I believe at that point, members of Congress, you want to know when Republican members of Congress will grow a backbone? I pray that would be when Republican members of Congress would grow a backbone. When the President of the United States, who's in the low 40s or high 30s in approval, decides to stand up against the Supreme Court, including at least a couple of justices that he put on the court, at that point, I think they will back down and the law will prevail on those matters, on those big matters, whether it's birthright citizenship, whether it's the Alien Enemies Act, whether it's impoundment, whether it's DOJ. I do think that in time, this justice system will prevail. And that's my hope, that's my expectation. We'll continue to track it very, very closely.
So right here, right now, is a great opportunity to get enrolled to receive the Congressman's informative e-newsletter. You can do that simply by pressing *6 on your telephone keypad right now. As we get back to another question, we've got John joining us from Oceanside. Hi, John, you're live. Go ahead with your question.
Yes, hi, Congressman. Thank you for having continued town halls. You've done a pretty good job of scaring us tonight on the current events. I'd like to step back, discuss the San Onofre nuclear power plant. It was shut down over a decade ago, but there's still, the danger's still there. And, we had an earthquake last week, and every time I feel it, I think about that nuclear fuel. There's canisters of spent fuel buried in concrete. It's just 30 yards from the Pacific Ocean. Now, some time ago, you guys said, not you.
Oh, Johnny,
sounds like we've lost John's phone line, but I think his question
yes.
is clear enough up to this point. Go ahead, sir.
Well, thank you, John, for the question. I will tell you that I've been working very hard on this for now 6.5 years, and I was very pleased to work very closely with the last administration to restart the spent nuclear fuel storage and repository program at the Department of Energy. And that included kickstarting a long dormant siting process for a consolidated interim storage facility or multiple storage facilities to get the nuclear waste out of songs as soon as possible. I introduced bipartisan legislation with my friend August Pfluger, a Republican from Texas, to modernize nuclear waste policy to put us back on more of a path to success. I work very closely with another Republican from Tennessee named Chuck Fleischman. Chuck and I are both appropriators. He is the chairman of the Energy and Water Subcommittee that has jurisdiction over the Department of Energy, and I serve on that subcommittee with him. And we have a caucus together called the Spent Nuclear Fuel Solutions Caucus that meets regularly to discuss these matters. And being an appropriator myself, I think will give me the opportunity to bring more funding to this effort. We've funded about $150 million since I've been in Congress. We've done things like finalize the design for the Atlas rail car. That's a specially designed rail car that is now ready to transport canisters of commercial spent nuclear fuel using rail or other modes of transit. And, we're making, I think, very good progress. And look, this is a really bipartisan thing. The red and blue districts across the country have challenges with this. And I'm doing all I can with President Trump's DOE. I will tell you the one thing that does worry me is that there have been some reductions in force, some firings at DOE, the U.S. Department of Energy, that have impacted the spent nuclear fuel program. And I worry that can threaten the progress that we fought so hard to make. But I am absolutely committed to working in a bipartisan fashion to get this solved for our community. I'm going to keep fighting for funding, and I'm going to keep fighting for legislation until the job is done.
Moving on to our next question. We're out in Oceanside again. We've got Derek on the line with us. Hi, Derek. You're live with Congressman Levin. Go ahead with your question now.
Yes, Congressman. I'm retired Master Sergeant, and I'm not allowed to be afraid as a Marine. We don't get afraid, but there's things we don't like, and a lot of times we don't get a chance to say anything about it. I've been watching you for a long time. Me and my wife and my kids, we sit down and we go through the voting deal, and we voted for you every time. The other thing I'm looking at is that we need to be honest and real with each other. This thing has gone too far. This thing has turned off the young adults that become young Marines. I was a drill instructor as well in the Marine Corps. And I used to talk to young men in grocery stores and different places and tell them about the Marine Corps and about it's a chance to get a kickstart in life, because it gave me one. I come from Baltimore, Maryland, highly dangerous town. But I knew that I needed to get out of it, and I needed to make a move, and the military was my move to make. And now I'm just disappointed in what I sacrificed. Means nothing. I fought in all the upcoming wars and all the Iraqi and Desert Storm, Desert Shield. I was there. And I'm just disappointed. I had a young Mexican guy I was talking to at the supermarket the other day, a supermarket called Super. And he was motivated. He was a good little kid. But he looked at me like, "You crazy. I'm not going in the military. I'm not going to do that. That's crazy." He said, "I'd rather sell real estate." I said, "Well, buddy, you 18 years old. What real estate are you going to sell?" And so I think we lost our way. I think we got to understand that the poor and destitute is who makes the country run, who sacrifice and go in the military. And I tell you, I'm so disappointed. I'm even to the point now when I see these guys driving around with Trump flags and the United States flags together, I'd be like, what is going on? Where are we? And I'll tell you, Mike, I voted with you several times. Ever since you've been running, I've been voting for you. But I know your hands are tied. But somebody needs to be honest and say, well, wait a minute. This is wrong. And if we don't stand up now and say this is wrong, people like me are going to be pushed to the side. And these young men and women who want to be in the military, they're going to say no. The only way we're going to get them in after all this garbage would be the draft. And I tell you, Mike, God bless America, and God bless you and your family. And if you could feel my pain, my heart is racing right now. If you could feel that thing right there, you could say, well, this man has been taken for a ride. I'm ready to get off the roller coaster. I'm just riding right now. And I talk to my kids. We vote together. All of us do that every year. I won't dare allow them not to vote. I tell them, I say, you know what black people went through to vote? And you telling me you ain't got time? I say, you crazy. So, Mike, I give my hand to you and your family and the American people. And I tell you, I love all of you, white, Filipino, black, whatever you are. I love you. I went to war for you. And I think it's time for us to say enough is enough. Let's stop this stupidness.
Thank you, Derek. I think we lost Derek. Well, let me just say, your words are incredibly moving to me. I think they were very moving to everybody that listened in. Know that I'm going to do everything I humanly can to fight for our veterans and our service members and their families. I'm so grateful to represent the Marines and sailors at Camp Pendleton. I'm so grateful to be part of the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Subcommittee that funds those programs throughout the country. And I'm going to do everything I can to fight against efforts to gut the VA, to gut services for our veterans, to fire tens of thousands of people at the VA. I'm going to do everything I can to stand up for operational readiness, including improving living conditions for the men and women who are serving, continuing to do everything I can to make sure that those men and women have enough to eat, have a good future, have good health care, and when they're done with their military service, for whatever they decide to do, for whatever service they decide to pursue, whether it's military or civilian, whether it's business or nonprofit, continuing their education, I'm going to make sure that they have the training, tools, and resources to do it, and that we don't forget about them once their military career has ended. I want you to know I have 2 Marines on staff. They're the best of the best. One of them might even be listening. Both might be listening. We would be honored to help you in any way that we can with any VA matter or any other matter that you have related to the federal government. Be my honor to be able to help you navigate through that. And I would encourage you to contact our office. And I'm going to leave it there. But just thank you for calling in. And it does look like we are just about out of time. So that'll have to be our last question. But before we conclude, let me again say huge appreciation for listening in and for everybody's excellent questions. I want to say special thanks to our friend Mark Sandy for joining us tonight. And Mark, I wanted to turn it over to you for any concluding remarks, and particularly how you see the next several months playing out. I know that in the past you've looked at a recession risk as greater than a 50-50. I'm curious how you feel. Obviously, I am not one of those that wants any unnecessary economic harm. I want to see the American economy do great. I want to see this president stick to his promises of reducing costs and improving our economy and working with us on a bipartisan basis, I hope, to get border security and immigration reform that maintains not only the security of our border, but the dignity of every person. So with that, Mark, I'd love to turn it over to you for your closing thoughts and predictions.
Well, Congressman, I want to thank you for being able to participate in this process and hear folks. I mean, I think it's clear that the next few months are going to be difficult ones. We're working through some difficult economic policies, and they're doing, a fair amount of damage. So, I think we've got to be clear-eyed about this. It's going to be difficult, but I'll have to say, just listening to this town hall and the people expressing their views as articulately and as deeply as they did, you can't come away without being optimistic about our country, because the process is just an amazing one. And as long as we continue to have folks like you to lead the way, I think we'll be just fine. So, the next few months may not be the greatest ones, but I think we'll ultimately prevail because, we do. That's that's the story of the U.S., the United States of America, that we prevail, and I fully believe that that'll be the case here as well.
Well, thank you so much, Mark, and I share your view that it's going to be rough, but we are going to be resilient, and we are going to ultimately have a stronger America. And thank you also for staying up late with me on the East Coast. And if we didn't get to your question, you can message me by visiting my website at levin.house.gov. As I mentioned to our last caller, my office is also here to help you with any issues that you or your family might be having with the federal agency, such as the Department of Veterans Affairs, Social Security Administration, or the IRS. Please call my office at 760-599-5000 if we can be of any assistance. That number again, 760-599-5000. And until next time, thank you for joining us. Have a great rest of the week.
Thank you very much, Congressman. And as promised, we did ask that poll question earlier in the conversation. And of those that responded, 97% are concerned that Trump's tariffs will increase costs for their family. I'd like to also thank everybody for joining tonight's live telephone town hall with Congressman Mike Levin. If you haven't spoken to a member of our team yet about subscribing to his e-newsletter, at this point in the call, just stay on the line. You'll hear a tone, and go ahead and spell out your name and email address, and we'll get you signed up. Thanks again for joining us for this event. We hope you stay healthy and safe and have a wonderful night. This concludes this event. Goodbye.